All right, so joining us now, we got Frank Isola, you got the Yes Network, you got ESPN, Around the Horn, PTI, and of course my favorite show on SiriusXM NBA Radio, the starting lineup. Frank Isola, Brian Scalabrine joining us here today. Frank, always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for checking in with us today. You covered Pat Riley for a long time in New York, Frank. When Pat Riley does the season-ending presser, like he did a few days ago, why does everyone get riled up in the national media? Pat does this every single season, doesn't he?
Yeah, but it's only once a year that he does it. And I think the things that he says, I think, unlike a lot of GMs, I think he says things for a reason. He's not afraid to address, maybe some sensitive topics. And I like the way that he went after Jimmy Butler. And I think if I'm a Miami Heat fan, I'd be really happy with Pat Riley because, making the playoffs isn't good enough. Getting knocked out of the first round isn't good enough. Pat Riley, wants to win the East. He wants to get to an NBA Finals. He wants to win a championship. And you could hear the disappointment in his voice. So the fact that he only speaks really, on that type of level once a year, it's always fun. So not that I want to see the Miami Heat get knocked out, but when they do get knocked out, I know we're going to get Pat Riley probably within 7 days. That's pretty cool.
Frank, there's no one else in the NBA, like no other executive in the league that is willing to be openly critical about their players, right? I feel like he's the only guy who's willing to do this.
Well, I think, he's a legendary figure in the NBA, certainly as a coach, most recently as an executive with the Miami Heat. I think a lot of players respect him. I think a lot of players want to play in Miami, so he's always going to have that kind of dangling out there as a carrot. But I think, when everyone talks about, setting a standard and a culture, it starts at the top. And, he and the head coach, Eric Spoelstra, are joined by the hip. So whatever Pat Riley's saying, now maybe some people don't always agree with it, but that's the letter of the law. That's what everyone is going to live by, what Pat Riley says. And I think it's pretty powerful. And I just like the fact that, the way that they played, guys got hurt. He found it unacceptable. And I like what he said about Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler, it's cute when Jimmy Butler is goofing around when the team is winning, but the whole playoff Jimmy stuff and, mocking the Knicks and the Celtics and Josh Hart, which I'm sure he was just trolling. But, it's not as cute when you didn't appear in a playoff game this year.
How do you imagine Jimmy receives that? Because, Jimmy could say he loves Miami, and we believe he does, but he's also a little bit of a crazy person. How do you think he receives that?
I think I'm sure whatever Pat Riley said to him, said publicly, he probably said something along those lines to Jimmy Butler already. And I think Jimmy Butler, he and Tom Thibodeau has always had a good relationship, and Tom is going to call it like he sees it. So I think Jimmy Butler probably respects that. And I think Jimmy Butler probably also understands maybe my act of being kind of the class clown. I show up on media day and I got my hair crazy because I know that's the photo that's going to be used throughout the season. Again, all that stuff is all well and good until you're not performing on the court. So they need him to be regular season, Jimmy, where he gets to play in maybe, 65 to 75 games, and the Miami Heat finish with the top 4 seed and have a much better chance of advancing through the playoffs. Maybe last year was a bit of fool's gold from the standpoint of they did a great job, made it to a finals, but it's hard to do it from that position, that deep. I mean, look at what's going on in the playoffs right now. You have the top, 4 of the top 5 seeds in the Western Conference are alive, and right now it's 3 of the top 4 seeds in the East are still alive, with Indiana as the 6th seed.
I got to tell you, Frank, obviously, like I told you, I listen to you and Scal every day, and I feel like you're the only person who is willing to push back on what has become an epidemic in this league when it comes to how many minutes guys are playing. The load management stuff obviously drives me crazy. But what the Knicks are doing right now, and this guy's playing 40 minutes, and this guy's playing 41, 42. Frank, we could all go back and look at guys like Magic and Bird and Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, Karl Malone. They're all playing in the 40s on average in every playoff game. Medicine is better today. The doctors, the travel. I mean, this idea that these guys in the playoffs can't play 40-plus minutes, it's bananas to me.
I think it is, and I also think if you look at the amount of stoppages that you have, natural ones, all the timeouts, which are always longer in the playoffs, halftime, which is long, all these replay reviews, that happen. Everyone's making it seem like these guys are sprinting for 48 minutes. That's simply not the case. And yes, you are in situations where you are playing every other day. The Knicks are in that right now. But, you do get more rest for the most part during the playoffs. It's not like the regular season. When you go, like the Knicks are in Indiana, they got to play 2 games over 48 hours, but they never have to leave their hotel room. So I think all that stuff is overrated. And, the one thing, too, guys like Jalen Brunson, he's getting rest. Josh Hart is playing all the time. He's playing 48 minutes, but the Knicks really don't have a lot of alternatives because the guys that are starting for them was supposed to be the backups. But then Julius Randle obviously went down. Mitchell Robinson has gone down. Now, OG Anunoby, who, let's be fair here, OG Anunoby has a history of being hurt. He was hurt for the Toronto Raptors in 2019 when they went on their championship run. So, so it's nothing surprising there. It's weird that I think it's mostly the fans and the media are always advocating for the players to work less. It's kind of bizarre. And the thing, too, if you remember, when guys came into the league, I don't think guys came into the league and saying, I'm going to stick around for 20 years. I don't think they were managing kind of their bodies like that. They were going all out all the time. I think the money being so crazy, I think the players look at it like, I need to get 3 of those max contracts before I'm done. And I think that factors into it as well. And I also think during the offseason, maybe take a bit of a break. Yeah, you want to work hard, but I think these guys, like, they're constantly, working out with their trainers. It's like nonstop. Maybe that's when they need to take a bit of a rest for like a few weeks or 3 weeks and then get back into it.
Another part that always makes me crazy about it, like I was hosting Game Night on ESPN Radio last night, and so I'm talking about this where you got all the conversation about how the minutes, it's not sustainable, right? These guys playing this many minutes is not sustainable, and Thibodeau needs to sit this guy, and he should play this guy less. And I'm thinking to myself, the coaches never get the benefit of the doubt. Like, is Tom Thibodeau, is he listening to, people like us who are talking about the minutes, and he says stuff, you know what? I haven't thought about that. You know what? These guys are playing too much. It may not be sustainable. As if Tom Thibodeau has not considered every option out there that has at his disposal.
Yeah, look at any coach, whether it's Eric Spoelstra and his staff, or in this case, Tom Thibodeau and his staff. No one is watching more film than Tom Thibodeau. No one is more selfish than Tom Thibodeau, whose only goal is to win. That's all he wants to do. So he's always going to try to put the people out there that he feels gives them the best chance to win. But when you start looking at minutes, all season long, Kevin Durant played a ton of minutes this year. Jason Tatum always plays a ton of minutes. The best players play all the time. And certainly when it gets to the playoffs, look at Tim Duncan's first 7 years in the league. I'm pretty sure he was over 40 minutes in every single playoff series. So it's just odd. To just look at the bench and say, oh no, play that guy 3 minutes. Well, those 3 minutes, if a guy's really not up, it's not a good matchup. That could hurt your team. So you're just always trying to give yourself the best chance to win. The other thing, too, about playing a lot, if you look at especially the last series against Philadelphia, in the fourth quarter, with guys like Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, they look fresh. It was Joel Embiid, who never plays, who looked completely exhausted yet again, and some other guys on the Philadelphia 76ers that looked a little bit run down. So despite as much as everyone says Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, and Brunson are playing, they seem pretty fresh when it matters most in the last few minutes of a fourth quarter.
I mean, don't coaches talk about this at every level, Frank, where they work you so hard at the beginning of the season in practice, so that we could be so well conditioned that we get to this point in the season where, guess what? You're in amazing shape, and that's why, because I want to play you so much.
You know what? Tom Thibodeau, when he coached the Bulls, he would see Jordan every once in a while, and, Patrick Ewing and Tom Thibodeau are close, and Patrick is obviously close with Michael Jordan. And, in a conversation he had with Michael Jordan, he told him, he basically in the offseason, I know Kobe Bryant was like this too, they conditioned their body to play 48 minutes a night. That's the way that they thought. Now, they knew at some point they weren't going to play 48, certainly not during the regular season, but come playoff time, there was a good chance their minutes were going to be 45 plus. So that's the best players condition themselves to play that way. And I think, the problem with a guy like Embiid, and this year he has a bit of an out because of the knee injury, he's never been, as Pat Riley would always say, world-class shape. And, the fitness level of a lot of guys needs to improve. I would say the same thing about Luka Doncic. Is he in world-class shape? I'm not so sure he is, and I think that tends to impact him a little bit in the fourth quarter as well.
Frank, I know you spoke about it this morning with Scal about Jason Tatum after the game last night talking about there's this expectation from the media, from fans, that we, the Celtics, we're supposed to win every game by 25. I don't know anyone that has that expectation. I do know that when you're a 12.5-point favorite in both game twos, in the quarterfinals against Miami and in these semifinals against Cleveland, you're not supposed to get blown out. I think that's a fair expectation.
No, I didn't understand that comment at all. It's not, and it's not even about the result. It's more about the performance. That performance was not good enough, and you don't see. There's a lot of times, and clearly we saw it last year against Miami in those first three games. You saw it against Miami this year in Game 2 of their first round series, where you don't see a lot of fight from the Boston Celtics. And there are times they look soft and they settle for long three-pointers.
There's a little bit of a bull mentality with them where they get punched in the mouth and they don't punch back.
Well, and that's why I think for the New York Knicks, now the Knicks are going to have some work to do, and who knows about their injuries. But if the Knicks can make it to a conference finals and they're playing Boston, Boston's got more talent, and I think you'd rather have more talent, but the Knicks are tougher. And, I think now that Miami's out of the playoffs, I think the only team in the East that is both, the overall, most mentally and physically tough team, I think is the New York Knicks. Philadelphia wasn't tough. I look at Indiana. I don't think they're physically and mentally tough. I look at Boston. I don't think they're physically and mentally tough. That's why I think a lot of people have felt that the Knicks, if now felt that they would need a little bit more help in terms of talent, would have a chance against Boston, much like Miami did last year. Miami went in with a much stronger roster with Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler. It's two talented players. But Miami was just tougher than Boston last year. And yesterday was not a good look for the Celtics. For me, it looks like, can you really see them winning 16 playoff games and lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy? I'm not so sure about that.
Frank, I think the Nuggets are in big trouble. I think we're obviously they're a champion. They could win road games, but I feel like we're gonna find out within the first 8-9 minutes of tonight's game how the rest of this series is gonna go.
Yeah, it is a championship team, and Jamal Murray's got a lot of fight in him when he's not throwing heating pads onto the court. I think Nikola Jokic has a lot of fight in him as well, and got Michael Porter Jr. has played really well this season. Of course, Aaron Gordon. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I'm not saying that Bruce Brown is John Havlicek, but Bruce Brown and Jeff Green gave them a little more off the bench than I think they're getting this year. But that still is a pretty talented starting five that they have. So we'll see. The championship medal that this team has. We'll see it tonight because no team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit before. That's what they're staring at. Minnesota right now looks like the best team in the NBA, especially the way they defend. They have a superstar player in Anthony Edwards. They missed the Defensive Player of the Year the last game, and they completely shut down Denver. I think you're going to get it. It doesn't mean that Denver's going to win, but I think Denver will give a big-time effort tonight to put themselves in position. Because you got to get one. You got to get game 3. It's over if they don't win tonight. I think it's the same thing with the Pacers. The only difference is the Pacers are at home, and they're going to be playing a beat-up New York Knicks team.
Lastly here, Frank, who did you pick to win the whole thing before the playoffs started, and have you changed your opinion?
I think I had Denver Celtics in the finals. I think I probably would go. I mean, I could wimp out and change it, so I'll do that. I'll go with Minnesota and Boston. Even though I'm tell you what, I'm still going to give the Knicks a puncher's chance. They got a little bit of what the Miami Heat had last year, and they got a little bit of what the Knicks had in '99 when they made that unexpected run to an NBA Finals.
I got to tell you, listen, I'm a Miami guy. I've been to the Garden a bunch of times, mostly for concerts. But you've covered a million games there in the Garden. Judging on television, the atmosphere in that building, it's wild. I love it.
Yeah, it is. And, the fans have been waiting a long time, and it's a very likable team. It's interesting, all the ex-Knicks that come back. It's cool to see Patrick Ewing there, John Stark, some of the other guys. There are a few guys there that they're featuring prominently that won 0 playoff series and 0 playoff games with the Knicks. Maybe your seating assignment should be based on your resume as a member of the New York Knicks, which is why I'd like to see my guy Charles Oakley sitting there courtside.
I feel like you just threw Marbury into the 500 level.
I didn't mention his name, but now that you bring it up, he did not win a playoff game. But I get it. I don't know. Maybe he wants to take Spike Lee's job. I don't know. Something's going on there.
Frank, have you given the new Pearl Jam album a listen yet?
Yes, I have. And I know they're coming to this area a bunch in September, so I got to start working on tickets. Not easy to get tickets to. I did see them. I told you. I saw them at the Apollo Theater. It was awesome.
I know. I saw them the next night at the Garden that year. I know. That was a lot of fun.
Look at you. You're all over it.
Come on. I'm trying. Frank, excellent job. Always loved having you on the show. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you.
All right. See ya.